Hey guys, what's up? It's Umbruhh here, and welcome back to my video. I can make things go blurry now, thanks to the power of NVIDIA's broadcasting software. Not sponsored, by the way, but I think I wanted to try this out for this video, so let's see how it works. So, today, if you guys can read by the title, I wanted to talk about my final impressions of Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. So, it's been 2 years since the expansion has come out. Sorry for my shit grammar, but I think it's fair to say that this expansion is my favorite. Like, this is my favorite expansion yet. In terms of the base content, I honestly, I still really like this expansion, but Heaven's Ward, is my favorite in terms of post content, but as overall, I think Shadowbringers is my favorite expansion, and today I want to be talking about, I guess, my impressions of 5.x of Shadowbringers, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna split this into a couple parts. So I'll be talking about my impressions of the MSQ, my impressions of some of the side content, like the Eden Raid series, Yorha Dark Apocalypse, The Sorrow of Werelit, and the Bozja Southern Front, or the Blades of Gunhilder Save the Queen. So let's start off with the MSQ. So, starting off with MSQ, I think it's fair to say that my favorite patch in terms of MSQ content was undoubtedly 5.3. Especially the ending where the 5.3 ending where the Scions are leaving the first made me really emotional. And the almost death of G'raha Tia really got to me. Even though I had a feeling he was gonna survive, but even then, just the weight of that moment really got to me. And I love the lore they expanded upon with the whole Ancients and Amarots in this patch. Plus, the Warrior of Light trial is just pure ecstasy. It's definitely my favorite trial in Shadowbringers. Although, I wasn't really big on 5.1, 5.2, and 5.4's MSQ. For the most part, they just felt kind of tame. Except for the climax of 5.1 and 5.4, where you go through the Imperial Palace as Estinian and hanging out with Gaius, fighting Xenos and whatnot, and the reveal of Fandaniel and the Telophoroi in 5.4 was an interesting part. Now, the story of those patches weren't bad by any means, they just felt a bit tame compared to Shadowbringer's base MSQ and 5.3 and 5.5's MSQ. And I really like how characters such as Elidibus and Merylwib were expanded a lot during some of these patches, and I'm finally glad that they brought Fordola back into the spotlight, like one of the few characters, in my opinion, in Stormblood that wasn't one-dimensional. And I'm interested to see what they do with these characters in Endwalker, or if they will do anything with these characters in Endwalker. Well, except for Elidibus, of course, because he's... But, I know a lot of people shit on Xenos and Fandaniel, but I'm interested to see what they do with them in Endwalker after building them up for their upcoming role throughout the entire expansion. And some of the solo instances within the MSQ are really cool. Now, especially, like I mentioned, fighting your way out of the Imperial Palace with Gaius in 5.1, or revisiting all of your experiences in Amaroth, like Elidibus summons simulacrums of your previous experiences throughout the expansion, and you have to make your way through all of them. I thought that was great. And in 5.55, where you and the Scions fight the Telophoroi in... I forget where the place was, but you switch between the Scions, like you play as yourself, you play as Urianger, you play as G'raha. I think playing as all the Scions was really cool. And the writers did an awesome job setting the stage for Endwalker and help bridging the gap to give players an understanding of what next expansion will be like, something that Stormblood failed to do for Shadowbringers. So overall, I would give the MSQ for 5.x and 8.5 out of 10. And now we're talking about the Eden Raid series. A lot of the fights were really enjoyable, and I enjoyed the unique spin on some of the primals that we previously fought in the source, such as the ARR primals. or the Cloud of Darkness, and I think the fights that particularly stood out for me the most were E4, E5, E10, E11, and E12. And the storyline was really good too, particularly with Gaia's growth and how she started out as hostile and standoffish towards the Scions, but eventually opened up and began her friendship with Reen. And the Final Fantasy VIII remixes and references throughout the entire series were really well done, especially with the remixes of Don't Be Afraid and Force Your Way. However, I am disappointed they didn't allude to Gaia being Ultimecia, despite hinting at it so obviously, and even with the E12 second phase playing the remix of The Extreme when fighting her, and the music was just top tier as always. Soken, keep up the good work. Overall, I'd give the Eden Raid series a 9 out of 10. Now, next thing I want to talk about, Yorha Dark Apocalypse, the 24-man Alliance Raid series. Now, I consider myself a pretty big fan of both NieR Automata and NieR Replicant, and so naturally I was really excited when they announced at the 2019 FanFest that the Alliance Raid series would be based off of the former, especially since I was kind of cheesed that they didn't do a crossover event with Final Fantasy XIV, but I thought this was infinitely better, and I still do to an extent. And I really enjoyed the raids themselves a lot. If I'd had to rank my favorites, it would probably be in this order: the Puppets Bunker, the Copied Factory, and the Tower at Paradigm's Breach. And I really enjoyed the scenery and general mechanics with a lot of the Puppets Bunker, especially that one trash pull near the end where you have to make your way through a hallway while avoiding AoEs and projectiles, and you have to like run and then you have to go. I just thought that was pretty unique compared to a lot of the previous Alliance raids. While I did enjoy the bosses for Paradigm's Breach, I found the general series rather disappointing, as it felt a little bit repetitive to just go up some stairs, go into a digital room to fight a boss over and over again. I wish we got to see, I guess, more of the tower like in the actual climax of NieR Automata, and the story is probably where I was disappointed the most. Instead of an actual story that kind of feels like something from NieR or based off of the NieR games, it honestly just felt like a second version of the Dwarf Beast Tribe quests. Overall, I'd give the rating for this raid series a 7 out of 10. The raids are really good, and the music is always a plus, but some things about it just felt kind of flat. Now, what I am going to talk about next, though, is the Sorrow of Werelit. So this is the Trial or Primal series that came out, so Ruby Weapon, the Sapphire Weapon solo instance, Emerald Weapon, and Diamond Weapon. Now, the story is definitely what stood out for me for this Trial series. I really liked how it carried over the rather dark and messed up tones that 5.0's MSQ did, and the storyline of the series had a particularly bittersweet yet heartbreaking ending at the same time, and I will admit it made me quite emotional watching the scene where all the memories came back to life, and I think the writers of the storyline did an amazing job overall. I don't like to admit this, but it actually almost brought me to tears. Additionally, I really like how Gaius' character was built over the storyline and shown us how much he's changed as a person, and characters such as his subordinates and his adoptive children were shown, particularly Alphonse and Ali. The only character I felt that wasn't particularly well written was Valen Van Varo. Now, the trials of the raid series were really fun fights overall, where you fought the gem weapons from Final Fantasy VII, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, and Diamond, and what I really liked too is how they even included the Sapphire weapon fight through the use of a solo instance where you pilot a Gundam. I thought it was a really cool idea that they should implement similar ideas for solo instances, and all the weapon fights were really cool in general and had a lot of fun mechanics, although I think Diamond Weapon was probably my least favorite. All of the weapon fights were really cool fights in general that had fun mechanics and saw the return of previous Garlean antagonists, with the exception of Diamond Weapon, which actually probably was my least favorite fight, but I still liked it, and the music of the fights were really enjoyable tunes as well, especially with the beginning of the fights that start with a cover of the song Ultima by Final Fantasy XIV's band The Primals. So overall, I would give the rating of The Sorrow Awarelet a 9 out of 10. And next, and finally, I will be talking about Save the Queen, The Blades of Gunhildr. So, I'll admit, I never liked Eureka. Like, even when it first came out for Stormblood, I tried a bit of it and I ignored it, so I was a bit hesitant when I found out that Shadowbringers would be the same thing, and also how we would focus on the Frothgar. sorry. I don't know why that happened, but I was pleasantly surprised when we got to the Southern Front in 5.35, I believe. I felt exploring the Southern Front and just fighting on the war-torn battlefield was great. I like how it was more, I guess, objective-based than Eureka, which just had you go around killing mobs. There was, like, a lot more objectives of things to do in the Southern Front. Like, you had critical engagements, you had those mini boss fights. I thought a lot of them were pretty cool, and especially how they all kind of had mini raids inside all of them, like the Castrum of Lacus Latore, Dalriada, and they even had their own kind of alliance raid called Delibrum Regne, which I thought were great, and the gear sets that dropped in the Bozjan Southern Front were really great too, like the Bozjan set of Fending, the Law's Order, and although I'm not talking about the one that's based off of Penelo from Final Fantasy XII, but the Law's Order set is what I really like the most, because I haven't really played much of Final Fantasy XII, but I always thought Gibranth's design was awesome as hell, and all of the Law's Order sets I think are based off of the Arcadian Judges, which I think are awesome. So I really like the gameplay of the Southern Front and Zadnor, and the story I thought was great as well, and the music was phenomenal. I got massive Witcher vibes from them, which I think might be because both the Witcher and the Bozja stuff are based off of Slavic kind of themes. And the story I thought was pretty cool, I guess learning more about Bozja and I guess continuing the Dalmascan storyline. And although one thing I particularly didn't like about the Southern Front's story is how Gibranth was handled. He was the overarching villain, but he was only shown 2 times, once at the end of the first patch which introduced this, where he was like, we will build our own nation with primals, and then he gets into an argument like in one of the post cutscenes with Lions Rem Helmos, and then it shows like if you get one of the field notes on Gibranth, it just reveals that he died off screen after an argument, which was a really shitty way to end the story, but who knows, maybe he survived. We all thought Gaius died too, we all thought Xenos died too. Who knows, he could be secretly alive or something, but yeah. And I didn't particularly like how the Resistance weapons were handled, how it was easier to get them outside the Southern Front and Zadnor than it was actually doing it. I kind of felt like it should have been the opposite way around, and especially how they had you grind through Alliance raids to get the material. They forced you, and I kind of wish instead they did that, but with the content that was actually in or related to the Save the Queen content, so like maybe Delibrum Regne instead. But overall, I still really enjoyed the Blades of Gunhildr content, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. And overall, I'll admit, I was kind of worried because I didn't particularly enjoy Stormblood's 4.x content, so I was worried something 5.x would be the same, but overall I really enjoyed the 5.x content for Final Fantasy XIV. Like Shadowbringers post-release content I think was really well done, and the developers have done an amazing job, and it just reinforces my hype for Endwalker, and overall, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Shadowbringer's post-release content, whether you liked it, whether you dislike it, and I will talk to you guys later. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more Final Fantasy XIV content. Follow me on Twitter and Twitch, and I will see you guys later. You guys are the best. Umbruhh out.